Hello, friends. Welcome back to Heartscapes, where we are practicing the system of Reiki at the intersection of self reflection, spiritual practice, and social action. My name is Michaela. Welcome back. I'm so glad to have you here with me today. So, is it important for us to fully understand a thing before we experience it? What is our relationship to knowledge and to understanding or not understanding? And how well or not well do we navigate the liminal space when we don't understand something yet? These are some questions that have been really present for me lately in the context of teaching Reiki. And honestly, that have been questions I've grappled with in my personal life for quite some time. And my relationship with these questions in some interesting ways has been a significant part of my own journey of coming into a place of feeling much more whole and stable and secure and healthy and grounded as a person. And so since these questions have been up in my life and in my teaching lately, I thought it might be valuable to explore them a little bit with all of you. And hopefully there's some value in here for you. So, just for some context here, I want to acknowledge that we in kind of Western society, I live in the United States, we live in a very cerebral culture. We value and prioritize and privilege the mind and the endeavors of the mind over many other ways of knowing and experiencing things. It's really important in our society to have knowledge, to have understanding, to know the answer, to get the answer right, to solve the problem. And we are rewarded for doing that. If we think back to school, how often are we praised and rewarded when we know the answer to the question? How often are we in trouble if we don't know the answer? This gets played out in our family life, in our communities, at work, certainly. There's this prioritization on the people who know the answer to the question. Of course, there's good reasons for this. Sometimes we do need to know the answers to certain questions. But we extend that prioritization of certainty and clear comprehension into realms where it's not as useful as engineering problems, for example. And we limit then our ability to be in a space of not knowing, to be in the liminal space of being curious and being open and unattached to knowing the answer to something. And when we're working through something like a spiritual practice, or when we're working on self development and we're trying to come to a place of understanding, in our life and bringing in concepts that can support that, oftentimes there is not a clear single answer to be found. Oftentimes the value is in being in the spaciousness, being in the liminal space of not knowing. Developing the ability to be with the discomfort of not knowing so that we can be open to the experiences that we're having. I have struggled with this in my life. I come from a very academic family, a very cerebral family full of professors and writers and just knowledge makers of all different types. And, I've definitely in my life, prided myself on my ability to know the right answer to things and to understand what is being said and to be able to make meaning and to make knowledge from that. And that served me well in a lot of ways, but it's also limited me in a lot of ways. And the first time I really had to grapple with this was in graduate school. And we were working through a lot of really, really complex questions about life and about relationships between people and the complexities of that and the just the challenges of being a human together in the world. And a mentor of mine, shared a poem by Maria Rainer Rilke that is a well-known poem that is inviting us to live in the questions of things and to not strive to answer those questions, to allow the answers to either be out of reach or to come to us slowly over time. And when she first shared this poem and kind of shared this advice that we should be living the questions, I was very resistant. I didn't understand. It's just ironic. I didn't understand this invitation to be okay with not understanding. Because we were in grad school, we were being faced with lots of important questions, and I wanted to know the answers, and I wanted to be able to solve the problems. And I was very resistant, very frustrated with this advice to live the questions. And interestingly, looking back now, years later, as I allowed myself to be in this place of not knowing, that particular question of what is the value of not knowing, and what is my relationship to knowledge, is a question that I've gotten a chance to live into over time. And by being in the space of that question, I've been able to gain a lot of insight and flashes of understanding that have happened organically through my life. And so this is now something I highly value and bring into my teaching and bring into, how I work with folks. And it's coming through again this season, because I'm teaching a Reiki 2 Okuden class. And in this class, we really begin to grapple with some of the more complex and esoteric concepts that come to the system of Reiki through its esoteric Buddhist roots. Concepts like non-duality, like non-attachment, like, working with the balance of opposites. Concepts that come through the symbols and mantras that are part of the system that we're, unraveling knowledge and information about, that comes through centuries and centuries of practice, translating languages through, multiple layers of translation. And there's a lot of complexity to these concepts, just basically understanding even what some of these concepts mean. And then how do we actually apply that to our life? How do we make meaning of them for our day-to-day life so that they have some value to us, right? Which is really the point. I say all the time in my teaching and just in conversation that if our Reiki practice, if our spiritual practice is not immediately available to us in the midst of our daily life, then it's of limited value. And so integrating a comprehension of some of these more complex and esoteric concepts, knowledge, is important for bringing the system of Reiki alive in our life. But the key is allowing that comprehension to come to us slowly over time and through direct experience with the practices. What I mean by that is that the system of Reiki is absolutely elegant and graceful and beautiful in its simplicity in terms of practice. The practices are simple, accessible. The concepts and the base of knowledge and experience that is the foundation underneath those practices is deep and complex. And so we have this elegant system where we can enter into the system through the simplicity of the practices and begin to be in the questions, be in the juiciness of these concepts. And embedded in the system are practices that allow us to better tolerate the discomfort of not knowing the answers, right? This is one of the most amazing gifts from the system of Reiki that I love to share, is that the simple foundational practices inside the system, one of the most immediate outcomes of practicing them is an increase in our capacity to be with the discomfort of our life, the discomfort of not knowing, the discomfort of navigating relationships, the discomfort of, dealing with struggles, of being afraid, of being angry, the discomforts that come to us when we have to navigate our complex life. And so much of the dis-ease and dissatisfaction and suffering and conflict that we generate amongst each other comes from our inability to be uncomfortable, right? Like, hear that again. So much suffering that we put upon ourselves and on other people comes directly from our inability to be uncomfortable. And when we can't be with discomfort, make more space around it so that we feel spacious and we can navigate that discomfort. We contract around it and we lash out about it so that we can cease the discomfort by any means necessary, or we numb ourselves out using substances or distractions or whatever else we do to get our mind off of being uncomfortable, get our mind off of not knowing, get our mind off of being in a liminal space. And so the elegance of the system of Reiki begins with simple practices that open up our capacity to be with the discomforts of life, to be okay, to be fundamentally okay inside of that discomfort, and to be easeful in our journey through it. And in the context of this conversation about understanding, what that means is that we can have a direct and nourishing and supportive direct experience with these practices without having to understand all of the deep underlying concepts. Now, we don't want to stop with that initial experience. We do want to marinate in these deeper concepts because that's how the system really comes alive in our day-to-day and is able to take us to deeper and deeper places. But the key is to not be in a hurry, to not fall victim to our culture's perspective that the most important thing is to know the answers to the questions as fast as possible, to get to the end game, to get to the finish line as fast as possible. No, that's not our goal. Our goal in opening up our practice is not immediate comprehension. Our goal is to have an initial experience, to marinate in that experience, to be patient inside of that experience, to notice what happens inside of it, to allow flashes of insight and understanding and intuition and value and nourishment to come inside of that experience little by little, sometimes all at once. Definitely can happen that way. But to really cultivate those flashes of insight over time, to capture them in some form so that we can remember them later. And to, anytime we feel frustrated because we don't know all of the answers, or we feel frustrated because we had that flash of insight and it all felt clear for a moment and then it was gone. Using the practice to navigate that discomfort and that frustration. It's right there in the foundational precepts of the system. Just for today, I anger not. Just for today, I worry not. Meaning, just for today, I release the frustration about not knowing. Just for today, I release the fear of consequences of not knowing the answers right away. Just for today, I am grateful for this practice that I can be inside of. Just for today, I'm compassionate with myself for all of the unanswered questions that I carry. Right? Just for today, I'm diligent in staying with the practice, in being with the questions so that I can live into the answers in some distant day when the moment is right. And so this, again, this is something that I've been working with my students this season. As I see that struggle, that wrestling that happens when we're introduced to something complex and we want to understand it so much, but that immediate comprehension is just not there. And I think it's also relevant in, many places in our life where we feel that we are, needing to struggle to get to the finish line, when we would be better served by taking our time, We'd be better served by simply being inside of the experience and allowing it to unfold over time, giving ourselves permission to not know. And so I just wanted to end, with this poem from Rilke that, really was my first introduction to this world of being okay with not knowing the answers, and the true, genuine value that has brought to my life. So the poem that was shared with me by my mentor in grad school that made me so frustrated the first time I heard it, and it's come to be a really valuable part of my practice. It's a well-known poem. You may have heard it. Be patient towards all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms and like books that are written in a very foreign tongue. Do not now seek the answers, which could not be given to you because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. So, my friends, what questions are you living in this season? What questions are you carrying with you? Do you feel frustration around not knowing the answer? If so, there is a way out of that frustration. There are practices that can help to put space around that experience of not knowing and to allow us to really live the questions that matter to us for as long as we need to. Let me know what's going on in your world, what you're carrying, what you're navigating, what questions you're living into right now. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your experiences with this. And if you'd like some support in navigating this territory, do let me know. I'll put in the show notes below a link to another video that shares some of these foundational practices that we can use to better live our questions. And as you walk through the questions of your life right now, may you be deeply provisioned for that journey. Thanks for being with me. I look forward to being with you again soon. Bye-bye.